Hello friends, my name is Aubrey. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you all here with me today. So lately, I've been seeing a lot of people on BookTube doing videos about like their top 10 favorite series or fantasy series of all time, or their top 10 favorite standalones of all time. And I had kind of resigned myself to the idea of not doing favorites videos because I cannot narrow things down. I am pretty much either I love something, I like it, or I don't like it. Or it's, there's also like an okay category, like it's fine. So the things that are in my love category, I cannot narrow it down to a top 10 anything ever. I don't know if any of you are like that, but when someone asks me like, oh, what's your favorite book? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what's your top 5 books? And I'm like, I don't know. So I had kind of just resigned myself to not doing any of these videos, but then I was like, you know what? That's silly. This is my channel. I can do whatever I want. So we're not going to do a top 10. We're just going to do like a series of videos about my favorite books or my favorite stories. Maybe we'll expand this series to include stories in other mediums, like TV shows or podcasts. I don't know. I haven't really worked it all out yet in my head. But what I'm thinking about doing is doing a series of videos where I talk about just 5 books at a time, and having some where I talk about standalones, some where I talk about series, some where I talk about nonfiction books that I just adore, that I love so much, and that I do consider some of my favorites. I'm not going to be narrowing it down. I'm not going to be ranking them in any sort of order, like I like this one more than this one. I'm just not going to do that because that stresses me out. I can't, and it's my channel, so I don't have to. But this is, like I said, going to be just a series of videos, and what I'll do is I'll just go through my shelves. I'm also only going to include books that I actually physically own, because if I try to think of every book that I've ever read, like checked out from a library or read in school, like that would also be very overwhelming. So I'm just going to go with books that I own, and I'm just going to go through my shelves, which are sorted alphabetically by title of book or series, and just pick them out that way. And then as I read more, or as I acquire more books, like copies of books that I have read in the past that do fit onto my favorite list, or as I, like I said, read more and find new books that go on that list, I will just insert them as we go. So we are going to start with standalones today, and I do have the first 5 off of my shelves that we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to really go over the synopsis of any of these, at least insofar as it doesn't relate to my thoughts. I'm really just going to talk about why these books are on my favorites list, why I love them, and why it would make me really happy if more people would read them. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. As I said, we have 5 to talk about today, and I'm limiting myself to 5 per video so that we're not here forever, because if you've been around for a while, you may know that I am very good at rambling. And when I get started talking about things that are important to me, that I love or am passionate about, I can talk for a long time. So we're going to limit to 5 books or series per video. So the first 5 of my favorite standalone fiction books. The first one that we have is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I know it's kind of funny to talk about this in the middle of June, well, second half of June, as we're approaching July, and it's like almost 100 degrees outside where I live. But I love A Christmas Carol so much. It is the first full-length Dickens that I've ever read. Like, I've read passages from some of his works in different classes and things in school, but A Christmas Carol is the first one that I actually sat down and read from start to finish. It's also quite short, but I just fell in love with his writing. Now, this is a story that I have been familiar with since I was a very small child, so the story itself has a lot of nostalgia for me. It has a lot of fondness, based on my association of this story with my childhood and with Christmas time. But also the story itself, even before I had read the book, the atmosphere, the portrayal of this story, and all the very different adaptations that I've seen over the years, from everything from the Muppets Christmas Carol to the, CGI Disney one, to ones that are in black and white. I have always felt such a love for this story and these characters, and reading the original story in Dickens's prose was an incredible experience. This man can write. It feels like his writing really is an art form. He chooses his words so carefully, and the language that he uses is so beautiful. And again, it evokes this sense of wonder and nostalgia in me, because people don't really talk like this anymore, which is kind of sad. I mean, not to say that everyone was talking like this in their day-to-day lives, but people don't write like this anymore, really. Now, I will say he is very fond of long, drawn-out sentences, but just the atmosphere that he evokes and the character development that he is able to achieve in such a small little book, and the prose itself is so beautiful, and I feel like he really brings the story to life. I can see why so many people are so easily able to adapt it, because he really gives you everything that you need in here. It's just so lovely. It's so beautiful. It has those kind of like slightly creepy moments to it, but never in a way that feels like you are genuinely, like, it never, even when it's showing the darkness in Victorian society, it never does so in a way that makes the story any less cozy, if that makes sense. So I love this. I really want to read more Dickens. I don't know how I'll feel about his other works, because, a lot of them are quite a bit longer. They don't have the same sort of cozy source material, but I do definitely want to read more of his works because of how much I love his writing style. And just, I mean, the story itself is so heartwarming, and it's so beautiful and cheerful, and just really puts you in the spirit for Christmas, which is one of my favorite holidays, I will admit. And it's perfect to sit down with a blanket and a drink and the fireplace roaring, and some Christmas music playing softly, and read this. And it's just delightful. Then the second book that I have is a very different sort of experience. I remember that I read this in 2020, during the lockdown for COVID. I distinctly remember because we had started feeding a stray cat who lived in our neighborhood, who had gotten pregnant, and that's actually where our 3 boy kittens are from, were her kittens. And she ended up having to go to a rescue who specialized in slightly feral and feral cats, because she was just very unsocialized, and we already had a cat. We couldn't just like let her have run of the house before we could handle her, because we did already have another cat, and they weren't very fond of each other. So we needed to be able to, handle both of them. But anyway, I remember that I read this that year because I remember sitting on the steps waiting for her to show up to get her food while reading this book. I also remember crying my eyes out, like literally bawling, just sitting there waiting for Miette to show up and just sobbing. But that book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Now, this is a story that takes place during World War II, and the reason that this is on this list partly is because of the visceral emotional reaction that I had to this book. It really just reached into my chest and grabbed a hold of my heart in a stranglehold. And I mean, it's also very, very beautifully written. Like, the way the story is told is so lovely. And the way that Anthony Doerr makes you care about these characters, because one of the perspectives that you follow in here is a Nazi soldier, but you start by seeing a different side to some of these people, where they are not always completely aware of exactly what atrocities are being committed, and moreover, they are kind of brainwash some of them from a very young age. And it's just the sympathy that he makes you feel for someone who, in most other stories set during this time period, would only be portrayed as the villain. And again, he and I'm not trying to say that he justifies anything that they're doing, because he absolutely 100% does not. I wouldn't like this book if he did. But it's showing that sometimes, unfortunately, when a regime comes to power, that regime and those in charge can very easily, in some cases, manipulate the vulnerable. And those people, while we cannot agree with their actions, it's also important in some cases to differentiate between the people who knowingly and willingly followed this regime and those who didn't, but still got involved in it, whether because they had no choice, whether because they were trying to protect someone else, whether because they were too young to really understand when they were initially brought into it. And, you know, those things, it's important to think about those people, because they are still people. And it's a difficult thing to do, I think, to, you know, make those distinctions and to have those, like, to have sympathy for someone who has done something that you can't have sympathy for their actions. I don't know if I'm making any sense. It's very well portrayed in this book. And again, the atmosphere is beautiful. The writing is beautiful. He also talks about this love for, like, learning. And just, like, finding joy in the world around you, even when terrible things are going on. But it's also completely and utterly heartbreaking. If there is a book that I own that has made me cry, like, if I have to pick a book that I think, maybe I should rephrase it this way, because I do have a number of books that made me cry, but if I have to pick a book that I think will make anyone who reads it cry, this one would definitely be on that list. But I think it's really, really worth the read if you are okay with reading a war novel, and if you are okay with tragedy. This one. It's really, really, really good. Okay, and then the next one that I have on here, once again, a very different sort of book. This time we have fantasy, set during the Victorian period. It is written in diary entries, and that is The Angel of the Crows by Catherine Addison. This is a very Sherlockian novel. It is very much inspired by Dr. John Watson and Sherlock Holmes, but it is also different in that you are not going, like, by reading Sherlock Holmes, you're not going to know what's going to happen in here. It's not exactly a retelling. But I loved this book. If you've been around for a while, you may know that Catherine Addison, over the last few years, has become one of my favorite authors ever. And this book, it's so good. As also a fan of detective stories and Sherlockian characters, this one is, like, tailor-made for me, but then it also involves the supernatural. And I mean, like, it on paper sounds very over the top, because she includes so many different supernatural creatures, everything from hellhounds to vampires, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy. But the way in which she does it makes this society feel so real. There are angels, there are werewolves, you know, there's all these different things, but it feels like it makes sense. And you are kind of just dropped into this world with very little explanation. You are discovering things as the story is going on, because you are following Dr. Doyle's diary entries, you know, with Crow in London, solving cases, again, in a very Sherlockian fashion. But I love it so much. And one thing that really stands out to me about Catherine Addison's books is her character work. Her characters really, really just dig their way into your ribcage and just settle in there for the long haul. I mean, they are like, I have not read a book by her yet where I have not become very quickly attached to the characters. It's just something about the way she writes them makes me love them so much. It makes me so invested in them. It makes me care about them. It makes me really, really wish that they were real so that I could know them. So yeah, it's phenomenal. The only complaint that I have about this is that it is a standalone. I wish that this was a series so badly. I want more in ways that I cannot describe to you. Like, if she just wrote 20 books in this series of just Dr. Doyle and Crow going and solving cases, I would be right there, just eating them up, enjoying every single minute of it. I also will say, there is a true life, a real life murder mystery that is incorporated into the story, and that is Jack the Ripper, which is a true crime mystery that I have been fascinated by since I was a very young child. Obviously, when I was little, I didn't know all of the horrific details, thankfully. But that just kind of is lurking in the background of all of these other cases that they're solving. And to me, it just made the world seem so much more fleshed out, because it felt like it's not just this event that's occurring. There are things going on elsewhere. Like, this is a world where other people are doing things and other things are happening to other people and not just our main characters. And I don't know, I loved it so much. And that's another thing I think she does a really good job of, is making her worlds just seem real and not over-explaining them to you. It's the same in the Chronicles of Ozrath, like with the Goblin Emperor, which we're not going to talk about today. You're going to have to wait till we get to that one in a series list. But that is something else that she does really, really well, I think, is you aren't given a whole bunch of information just like dumped on you. It's more just like, here's the world, here's how it is, go for it, you know. And you just, like, as you find out new things, you're like, okay, sure, like, that makes sense, I guess. This is part of the world. This is just what it is. It's just like living in the real world. You find out, you know, as a kid that there are elephants in Africa, and you're like, okay, you know, it's like that. It's just, I don't know if I'm doing a very good job at all of explaining this, but I just think, and again, her writing is very beautiful. It's not really flowery, but just the way she writes is just so easy to read, but it also sounds so elegant. Yeah, I think that she's a phenomenal, phenomenal author, and I love this book so, so much. Maybe one day I'll be able to move it off of the Standalones list and onto the series list. I'm an optimistic person, so I'm going to hold out hope. Alright, and next we have another classic, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I love this book so much. It is humongous. I highly recommend that you read the unabridged original text. The abridged one is just not as good. But I read this book for the first time in high school. One of my English teachers had this system set up in her classroom where part of your grade was based on independent reading. And so what you did was, she had a bookshelf of different books that she had curated and collected. And for each of those books, she had a test that you could take. And depending on the length and difficulty of the book, the tests were worth different amounts of points. And you had to earn a certain number of points within that semester in order to get like 100 for that part of your grade. So I went up to her bookcase and I looked for the book that was worth the most points, which was The Count of Monte Cristo. And I was like, I'm going to read this and go ahead and knock out a huge chunk of points. little did I know how sucked in I was going to be. This book is the best revenge story ever written. I am completely confident in that statement. I do not advocate for revenge in real life, but in literature, it can be a really, really fun time, especially when it's something like this. This plot is so well thought out. The things that, like, our main character, Edmond Dantes, does, the way that as you read through it and you are learning about his plan as it unfolds, oh my gosh, it's so good. So good. Also, Edmond Dantes definitely deserves to be on the literary crush list. He is such a good character. And it's also tragic because you see him going from who he is at the beginning of the novel to how he is after these events transpire and after he is wrongfully imprisoned and accused and betrayed. And it is tragic that this person who was so innocent changes because of the actions of others. Now, obviously, I'm not, like, he's making his own choices. I'm not trying to say that they forced him into doing what he does. He makes his own choices, but the way that he changes, and I don't know. And it's just so good. Like, this one, the plot, as I said, the way that this book unfolds, and I don't really even know what else to say about it because there's so much in here. And it's like, if you've read The Great Gatsby, this is not like The Great Gatsby in tone or scope at all, or setting, but if you've read The Great Gatsby, this idea of, like, you learning about Gatsby as events unfold, that's kind of the same idea here, in a way. Like, you obviously know things that the other characters don't. But you're also not privy to everything that Edmond Dantes is planning right from the beginning. So it's so good. Some people will be like, oh, this book is too long for certain books, like different things could have been taken out. I don't think this book is too long at all. I think it deserves every single page, and that's just my personal opinion. I think every word in here is deserved, and I love it. Okay, and then the last book that we're going to talk about today for this first video in this series is Good Omens, The Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Agnes Nutter, Witch by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Good Omens is such a special book. It has so much humor in it that actually landed for me, which is wonderful because honestly, sometimes I don't get along with certain people's humor in literature, but this one literally makes me giggle so much throughout the story. The characters are also very endearing, and I really like the messages that are in here about loving someone even when others tell you you shouldn't, about giving everyone a chance and how everyone has both bad and good that they can choose to do, right? And even if someone does something bad, it doesn't mean that they are incapable of change, and it doesn't mean that they're incapable of good. And I love that. And I know that sounds really, really heavy for a book that I just said is really funny, but that's the beauty of it. It really manages to convey all of these messages in a story that is so humorous and silly, but also so beautifully written. And I will say, I myself am a Christian, and I unfortunately have heard a number of people who are also Christians talk about how this book is very anti-Christianity. Personally, I don't read it that way. I see this as being more, like I said, about trying to get these particular lessons across, and basically about showing to use Aziraphale's favorite word, the ineffability of God's plan and how dangerous it is for us to try to decide what we think God's plan should be, if that makes sense. And that one of the most important things is to love one another and to help one another and to try to give people those chances to be good and to do good. That's, again, how I take it. But it's also so witty and so funny. And again, this book, the way it's written is it's written in a style that, again, you don't see a lot of in literature. The word choice is often very intentional. The phrasing used is used to affect, again, a lot of the times to make you laugh. And the style is just so unique. I've never read any other Terry Pratchett. I have read some others of Neil Gaiman's works, namely I've read The Graveyard Book and Neverwhere, which I also love both of those. But Good Omens is just, it's something really, really special. And I really like how they have such serious events and serious topics written in a way, like I said, that comes across very lighthearted without taking away from the importance of what's happening. Yeah. Also, the adaptation with David Tennant and Michael Sheen is really, really good. But yeah, it's just, it's such a fun book. It also is very cheeky, and it very much like is talking to the reader, which is also really fun. But yeah, I love Good Omens so much. If you can't tell, I have so many copies of it up here, because it's just, it's so special, and I love it a lot. Alright, so those are the first 5 books on my favorite standalones of all time. I don't think this is going to be a series of books that I'm just going to like do straight through. These are going to just be scattered in with other videos that I do. But, you know, whenever I want to come back to this list and talk to you guys again about some of my favorites, we'll do that. And like I said, I'm doing, you know, some videos for standalones, some videos for series. I do want to do videos for nonfiction. Although I do need to kind of figure out how I'm going to do that, because there is a big difference between nonfiction that is telling a story and nonfiction that is discussing a topic. So that is something that I kind of need to figure out. The ideas are kind of still percolating. But yeah, so I hope this was enjoyable. I hope that you guys had fun. I'm sorry if any of you are disappointed that I'm not doing like a top 5 or a top 10 or anything like that. I genuinely can't. It causes me way too much stress to try to make a list like that, so I'm just not going to. There are too many other things in the world that are stressful, so let's not add any more on the plate. But yeah, I thought that this was, it's fun. I really enjoy it. I really like the opportunity to talk about things I love. So I think I'm going to enjoy doing these. And as I said, as I get more books that like I've already read, or as I read more that then make it onto this favorites list, we'll just, you know, add those on going forward and drop them in. Even if we've already like, you know, gone past their letter in the alphabet. So this will be an ever-growing list, I'm sure. Hopefully. That's what we all hope for, right? When we read new books, is that they're going to be new favorites. So hopefully this list will keep growing. But yeah, so, thank you guys so very, emoji. Let's do, is there a teapot emoji? I've got my little teapot necklace on. If there's a teapot emoji, then you want to leave an emoji with your comment, or you don't really have anything to say, but you want to let me know that you were here, you can put some teapots down there in the comments. Or if there's not a teapot emoji, because I'm honestly not sure, just pick an emoji that you think represents any of these books, or the vibe of any of these books. Or you could do both, teapot and vibe. But yeah, I really love to talk to you guys in the comments. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I appreciate your comments. And I would love to hear, if you've read any of these, what your thoughts are on them. Again, just always keep all comments spoiler free, please. Or if you want to share some of your favorite books, maybe they are books that are also on my list that are going to appear later, or maybe they will be new things that I can add to my TBR that might one day make my list. Yeah, I would love to hear from you guys, so, you know, pop any of those down in the comments. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that you are all having a wonderful day or a wonderful night wherever you are, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!